Learn about regression and childhood trauma. Hi, I'm Dan Ross, and today I'm here to talk about regression in hypnotherapy and how it can be used to find and also to resolve childhood traumas. So I first want to talk about what regression is, and it's just this capability that we all have to go back in time. A very simple example of that is, what did you have for lunch yesterday, right? It's probably not far enough back in your mind that it's gone unconscious, or it's kind of been emptied out of your conscious awareness. And that's an example of regression. You kind of have to go there to think about it, whether you picture yourself having your lunch or whether you imagine being inside of it, and whether it's you seeing it or telling yourself or smelling it or tasting it. Memory for how people remember and experience things will be different for different people. But you had to have just a little bit of a regression in order to experience that, right? Because for most people, they have to kind of step in and have some sense of the experience. So that's what we do when we do regression work, which is really common in hypnotherapy, and it's considered a centerpiece for a lot of work. Because often what's happening today is caused by something that's in the past. And so the point of that is that, we could work all day on the stuff that's happening today. So for example, somebody who has a weight issue. I had somebody who came in recently, and part of her problem was snacking. So every day in the afternoon, she would just start snacking and eating and eating and eating like there was no tomorrow. And we could have talked about, let's substitute some behavior, let's motivate you, let's do a bunch of different things, which could also be done in hypnosis. It could be done by a coach. But what we found through regression is, and she had no conscious awareness of this, we took her back to when she was 8 years old, and she'd be left home alone, and that was her way of comforting herself. And when the two and two got put together in her mind, like, oh, that's why I'm doing it, all of a sudden she's like, oh my God, yeah, I don't have to do that anymore. And all of a sudden the problem was gone. And so that's the sort of reason why we would do regression work. And for something like childhood trauma, we can find things that people are aware of and go back and clean it up, which we'll talk about in the next video. Or sometimes people, they're just curious, right? And I'm always doing the work in service. Okay, curiosity is nice, but really you're in my office and sitting in my chair for a reason, which is something today is not the way you want it to be. So regression is, again, going back in time, and it can be done in trance or out of trance. And there's a little bit of a technicality there, because the thing when I said a moment ago, think of what you had for lunch, you actually had to go into a mild trance. You actually had to kind of put yourself into it. You had to focus your attention on something. But of course, in the office, we would have you in a deeper trance, but you don't necessarily have to have some kind of profound trance in order to do regression work. And that's one of those myths that I want to bust. And certain things may be possible in deeper trance, but most of the time it's not necessary, and everybody's going to have a different level of trance, and profound work can be done with your eyes open, right? And profound work can be done in a light trance. So I just wanted to bust that myth a little bit. And let's just do one other little example of regression, and that's, if you just think about one of the houses you lived in, or apartments, whatever, think of your childhood bedroom, and just pick one if you had more than one. And if I were to say, describe it in some detail, you probably could. You could probably tell me what size your bed was. It probably wasn't a king size bed, right? You might be able to describe some of the colors of the walls, the carpeting. You might describe some of the smells, some of the sounds. Like I know somebody who grew up on a really busy street, and she finds the sound of cars going by soothing to her. So if you just kind of imagine your childhood bedroom, again, if it feels safe and appropriate, you can kind of put yourself into it and really experience some of that. And that's just an example of going into just a little mild trance, and we could recover more and more of that memory. I could ask you to look around. I could, there's all sorts of ways that we could have you just what we call revivify that experience. So we use regression. It's, again, a really common tool used in hypnotherapy. It's used to find and then ultimately to resolve childhood traumas. And then in the next video, we'll talk about how specifically that we do that.